India has protested on the treatment meted out to the lady from Arunachal Pradesh and protested very strongly and in writing both in Delhi as well as in Beijing. Even the Chinese are defensive about what has happened over there. So I personally think it is a case of an overzealous immigration official. We raised the issue and the issue has now been closed and the lady was allowed to go to Japan. Nyoma is behind a huge mountain and it is a landing strip which is protected by the terrain. And this particular landing strip is a flat plane. It is unlike DBO.
So these are transport aircrafts that we're talking about? Are we talking about, fighter jets as well?
Nyoma, you can use fighter jets. Nyoma, you can use anything to land. But you are right when you say that this is also a response to what the Chinese are doing from across the LAC. We have really packed up the Siliguri corridor, as it's called, with all equipment that will ensure that the enemy cannot intrude into the territory from either side.
So when you say either side, you mean China and Bangladesh?
I'm from either side, as I say, because we have packed it up with artillery guns, we've packed it up with missiles, we've packed it up with aircraft, and believe you me, when I say packed it up, it really means packed it up.
Recently, Chief of the Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal AP Singh, inaugurated the Nyoma Air Base in Ladakh by landing a C-130J Special Operations aircraft there. It is being seen as a shot in the arm for India's infrastructure push along its farthest frontiers. On the other side of the LAC, China has made substantial investments in the Western Theatre Command, including constructing new air bases and heliports and improving existing infrastructure. Many of these air bases in Tibet and Xinjiang serve dual civilian and military purposes. Based on open source information, multiple reports suggest a notable surge in this infrastructure. Since 2017, 37 airports and heliports within Tibet and Xinjiang have been either newly constructed or extensively upgraded. In this episode of Point Blank, I will be talking to Shishir Gupta, Executive Editor, Hindustan Times, about these developments and what does this mean for India-China relations. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time and doing this. So, before we start talking about these developments, let's quickly talk about something which has happened recently, literally just under 48 hours. And that is somebody from Arunachal Pradesh. A lady was traveling to China, actually Japan. And on her way to Japan, there was a halt on a flight and she was to board another flight. And she was stopped there because she was from Arunachal Pradesh and that information was perhaps evident on her passport. So Prema Wongjom Thangdok from Arunachal Pradesh said that Chinese immigration officers, hassled her, troubled her for hours. Let's just talk about this for a while because this has been an issue. We have seen, especially passports from the Northeast, do get this kind of treatment from the Chinese.
See, Abhishek, what has happened is that India has protested on the treatment meted out to the lady from Arunachal Pradesh and protested very strongly and in writing both in Delhi as well as in Beijing. Now, the point is that she was made to wait for about 18 hours. She was in transit and the fact remains is that there is allegation of harassment of the passenger. Now, while, this is an important incident that has happened, but what I get out of it is that even the Chinese are defensive about what has happened over there. So I personally think it is a case of an overzealous immigration official who decided to do things on his own. And there was no method in this madness. And the man did it. We raised the issue and the issue has now been closed and the lady was allowed to go to Japan. Now, the point in this is that, one does not need to sort of, overreact or overinterpret things. There was an incident, we have reacted very strongly, and the matter stands where it is. But there is a larger issue. Now, but if this continues further, this has much more serious ramifications because if you are going to hold up passengers who are going in transit, who are not even traveling to your country, this lady was coming from London to Shanghai to wherever place in Japan. If you're going to do this in transit, this is violation of protocol. So this has other serious ramifications of travel. And in this case, if it happens time and again, then, it becomes very difficult for people to transit. This can happen. It has happened in Shanghai. It can also happen in Delhi. It can also happen in Calcutta.
Right.
I hope you understand what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah. So, but while she was there and while this was happening, and as soon as she raised this, as soon as, this came to the knowledge of Indian mission in China, all help which was necessary was sort of, extended to her.
Yes, at the moment she raised the issue, the Indian Consul General in Shanghai, he took up the issue. The Indian embassy in Beijing took up the issue very strongly, and the Indian government was involved. And this was informed at the apex level because, we are very sensitive about, what things happen to people from Arunachal Pradesh. And if this is the case, if it's going to take place, then it's a matter of concern. That's why we actually demarched China, both in Delhi as well as in Beijing. And this has also happened before. We have had these incidents of stapled visa. We have this incidents of, people not being allowed to travel. Now, given that we are trying to improve relations with China and we are heading towards normalization, this definitely is a bit of a hurdle. But as I said, I don't want to overinterpret because the incident now stands closed.
Okay.
But anything that concerns with Arunachal, which is a part, wholly and fully part of India, it is a matter of concern.
China's arguments there notwithstanding. That said, I want to circle back to, what we started with. And that is, of course, the kind of infrastructure building that we're seeing along the LAC. But specifically, let's start with Nyoma. Let's talk about the significance of this base. And of course, what has happened there, it's been inaugurated. Now it's operational. So if you can talk to us about the significance of Nyoma base.
The LAC in Ladakh, in East Ladakh, is about 1597 kilometers. And it originates at Karakoram, goes down to Chumar.
Right.
And there have been 3 landing strips over there. There is a landing strip at Daulat Beg Oldie. Yeah. There used to be a landing strip at Chushul, and there is a landing strip at Phukche. And then there are a bunch of advanced landing helicopter grounds all over the place. Now, this particular Nyoma airbase, this is basically behind Chushul landing strip.
Okay.
Chushul landing strip, the way it is placed, is directly under observation of the Chinese and can come under artillery fire any time.
Mm-hmm.
But Nyoma is behind a huge mountain, and it is a landing strip which is protected by the terrain. Mm-hmm. And this particular landing strip is a flat plane. It is unlike DBO, which is about 16,000 feet, and it's very difficult to land over there. Now, this is a flat territory, and you can land whatever you want to do, how so big aircraft you can do, because it's a flat terrain, and that's where it is. Now,
so these are transport aircrafts that we're talking about. Are we talking about, fighter jets as well?
See, Nyoma, you can use fighter jets. Nyoma, you can use anything to land. You see, if you look at Ladakh, you have fighters placed in Leh, you have fighters placed in Thaw, you have fighters placed in can be placed in Nyoma when the hardened shelters or when the blast pens are made.
Right.
But as I say very clearly, this particular airbase, Nyoma airbase, is used for buildup. It will not be used in war because it will be taken out in the very first go, just like the Chinese air bases will be taken out by missile strike because they're just too close to the LAC. Right? I have been to Nyoma, and one has to understand that it is very close to the LAC, and there is a Chushul Brigade, and this will basically supply the Chushul Brigade. So whenever things like May 2020 happen, there is tension and then there is a build-up. You need to land troops, you need to land equipment, you need to land rockets, you need to land missiles, you need to land everything. So that particular requirement Nyoma fulfills. And that is what Nyoma is all about. Daulat Beg Oldie, you have a strip over there, but Daulat Beg Oldie has an issue because it's at a very high altitude. The area is very windy. And you virtually have to, tether the planes to just to make them stand over there.
Yeah. And also it doesn't make sense for planes to sort of fighter jets to take off from very high altitude airports,
Beg
right?
Oldie, you cannot take fighter jet. Beg Oldie is only used for special operations, which is basically using C-130J. You can land C-130J over there. You can land AN-32, right? And of course helicopters. But Beg Oldie has other issues also. The terrain is there are issues of shooting stones. There are issue of very cold weather, and then there are issues of areas. It is the wind is just simply mind-boggling over there.
Yeah.
So I've landed in Beg Oldie in 2010, so I understand what we're talking about. But Trishul is essentially, this Nyoma Air Base is to help India to protect its territory if and when any tension or anything takes place from across the LAC. That's what it is all about.
Now let's talk about the timing of this, because I mean, this India could have done 10 years ago, this India could have done 5 years ago, this India could have done 15 years ago. Why now? Is it because of the kind of infrastructure development that we're seeing on the other side of the LAC, which is in Xinjiang and in Tibet? Because Western Theatre Command for PLAF is where we have seen development of a lot of dual purposes, facilities, including air bases and, helipads. So is it because of that the timing of this has been, now and perhaps not before, that India is sort of trying to keep up with what China is doing on the other side of LAC?
See, Nyoma was on our agenda, but things are not so simple when you come to make air bases and when you have to build up infrastructure. But you are right when you say that this is also a response to what the Chinese are doing from across the LAC. Now, if you look at China, you have seen China build up right across Demchok Chumar is Gargunsa Air Base. Earlier, it used to be just a supply base. Now, it has got hardened blast pens over there where you can position fighters over there. Similarly, if you look at Lhasa, Lhasa is a dual-purpose airport. Lhasa now has not only it has blast pens within the mountain, it's got tunneling facility. It has got ammunition depot within the mountain, carved into the mountain. It has got hangars carved into the mountain. So it's a perfect dual-purpose military base that can be used. Similarly, if you look across Arunachal, you have Ningchi. Now, Ningchi Manling Airport is again a dual-purpose airport where again you see blast pens, again you see, all this, major military upgrade of these air bases. If you look at Xinjiang, you see air base in Hotan, which is main thing, and then you see an air base in Kashgar. So all these are important air bases that will be used in case of worst case scenario. And all these places have now acquired, blast pens to house fighter jets.
Could you explain for the viewers what are blast pens?
See, essentially, if and when the red flag goes up, you will see that the aircrafts will be targeted on ground.
Right.
So they are put under hangars which are made of hardened shelters, and then there are some hangars which are made within the mountain. They carve it out in the mountains, and then you make shelters which are bomb-proof, missile-proof. These are what are blast pens over there. And these hardened shelters, you see it very evident in Gargunsa, in Lhasa, in Hotan, in Kashgar, in Ningchi, in Yadong, in Shigatse. So all these places, you see a huge infrastructure upgrade by the Chinese. It's in their territory. They are doing it what they want to do, right? All along the 3,488 kilometer LAC. So we also have done similarly, taken up similar upgrade. All this has happened post 2014, where you decided that you will respond exactly to what is happening and what is your threat perception from China. So these are defensive postures. These are not offensive postures, but you have undertaken upgrades like DBO airport, air runway is ready. Similarly, Nyoma is ready. So then you see a couple of advanced landing grounds coming up in Uttarakhand, advanced landing grounds coming up in Sikkim, in Arunachal Pradesh, and new airports coming up, new air bases coming up in Arunachal Pradesh, which can be used for military purposes if and when required. All this is to help logistic supply build up so that nothing like 1962 ever happens.
Right, right. And also what's interesting is, of course, the fact that Tibet and Xinjiang, talking about the Western Theatre Command of the PLAF, is also, the arm of the Chinese army, which is supposed to keep an eye on Russia. So should we, see it from that angle at all? Like, should Russia also be concerned?
No, I don't think so. Western Theatre Command really has a threat perception from Russia. Russia is handled by the Northern Command.
Okay.
Right? So Russia is handled by Northern Command. Russia is handled by the Eastern Command. And I don't think so. China and Russia have any sorts of problems like that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Not as of
Western
now.
Theatre Command, the full Western Theatre Command is looking at India, right from Kibuthu all the way up to Karakoram Pass. So the entire thing is there, and this is focused only towards India.
Right.
And it is it's one of the biggest theatre commands, and it is looking at Tibet, which is restive, and it is looking at Xinjiang, which again is restive area.
Right. Okay. Now, what does this mean? This development that we are seeing across the LAC. You just talked about, places where China is developing infrastructure. India, of course, is responding and also doing it right from Leh all the way to Arunachal Pradesh. So what does this mean as far as China-India relations are concerned? I mean, where are we headed? Where are we going? Are we both just sort of, putting ourselves there, entrenching ourselves there? But at the same time, one spark, like the kind of thing that we saw just a couple of years ago and then before then 2017, could that be like, a worst case possible scenario which both countries want to avoid? But could this build-up eventually lead to that?
See, we are looking at a very stable, predictable relationship with China. It's headed toward normalization from what happened in May 2020, from what happened at Doklam in 2017. We are looking at a predictable relationship, and our assessment is that even China is looking for a peace and tranquility on the border. But that does not mean that the two sides cannot prepare for their own defensive postures. We are prepared on our side, they are prepared on their side. But now what has happened is, what we are looking at is that, the two sides have the armies in a non-offensive posture. Now, there has been a disengagement all across the 1597 kilometers in East Ladakh. Now, the de-escalation has to take place. Already, there was an issue of Indian Army not being allowed to patrol in Demchok and Depsang area. That has been allowed. The Indian Intelligence Bureau has been able to build up its post in Butse, which is next to Depsang. They have an all-weather post now, and which was inaugurated I think in August or in September. So there has been a thaw in the relationship. It's going towards normalization. Both sides are willing to do that. Let's be very clear on that. And, there is no point in sort of, just going in sort of warmongering syndrome. This is basically defensive posture that you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? We are building up very strongly and defensively in the chicken neck in the Siliguri area.
Yeah.
So that nothing like that happens, because we now have an issue even with Bangladesh, with the government being what it is over there.
Yeah.
So the point is that we are protecting our territory. We are not looking towards China for any escalation of anything like that. But we are prepared for anything if it happens. And second thing is, when the Chinese National Security Advisor and the Politburo member, as well as the Foreign Minister Wang Yi, came to India in August, and he met the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. We also decided that the places where we can actually have hardly any difference on the border, we start demarcating. First, delimiting the border and demarcating the border permanently. So the places where there was least friction, which essentially means you're looking at the middle sector, the Uttarakhand sector,
Right.
That's where you're looking at. And then you build up towards other thing. So earlier, the thing was that, you would actually take a full picture of the border and try to solve it simultaneously. No, we have now decided to solve it sectoral wise.
Right.
And that's what we are doing. But as I say, we are looking at it's a situation where both sides understand each other's security concerns, mutual sensitivities, and try and work it out. It is all headed towards normalization, but at the same time, nobody wants to take any chances. And it is for this very reason that we are prepared from Daulat Beg Goldi all the way down to Kibuthu via Nathula, Uttarakhand, and every place.
Yeah.
And, there used to be a time where, India would not build roads because the fear was, and this is not, the fear was Indian Army's fear. This is about 25 years ago, that the Chinese would come in.
Yeah.
Now this fear is not there at all. We have built up roads, we have built up helicopter, places to land. We have built up advanced landing grounds. We have built up airports, air bases, and to my mind, whenever next time a tunnel is going to be made in India, it is also going to have an ammunition depot. That is what the recommendation is, so that future wars are all going to be wars of standoff weapons. There's not going to be a war where, the fighter, there's good dog fights and everything. It's all over.
Right.
So if that is the scenario, you need places where there is protection. You need places which are hidden under the radars. And that is what we are looking at. But as I say it again, it is with China, it is now towards normalization. It is now to accommodate each other's security concern, rather than escalate on anything. Yeah. And the hope is that May 2020 does not happen again.
Yeah. And a prepared adversary, in this case, from China's point of view, India, which has also, done all of this preparation, will of course prove to be a deterrence in itself.
See, that the whole thing is that, China also has to understand that today, China sort of, used to lean on India because it had interest in, it thought that Arunachal Pradesh was its side. Now China is facing problems with Japan. Yep. China is having problems with Philippines. China is having problems with Taiwan. China it's not so seen as a benign power anymore. It's seen as an expansionist regime in a big picture way. So China has also think about before it starts to sort of lean on somebody, because now the pressure is coming from all over.
Yeah.
And so that is why China has to also understand, and China does understand. But as far as India is concerned, India is very clear that it needs a peace and tranquil border on its north for its economic growth and for its development and for its position where it wants to reach in the global community.
Yeah, and to deter an expansionist power, it is better to be prepared. Having said that, I want to move to one thing which you briefly touched upon, that is, of course, the chicken neck. And the reason I want to talk about it is, of course, there was a meeting in Delhi recently of, members of CRPF, BSF and other forces, and Siliguri has been in news as well. So talk to us about what are India's preparations in that area to protect that significant chunk of land which connects the mainland India to the northeast.
See, I will not get into classified domain in this, but you have air base over there, which is Hashimara, which was built up to house the Rafale aircrafts. Then you have, you built up very strongly over there. There is 33 corps sitting over there, right? But in time of war, you cannot operate so close to the LAC because you will be taken down. The air base will be taken down immediately, despite the blast pens, and Hashimara now has blast pens and everything. So you will have to operate deep within. And because there is a flat land, so it's impossible to sort of, stay in hiding or do that. But what I understand is that we have really packed up the Siliguri corridor, as it's called, with all equipment that will ensure that the enemy cannot intrude into the territory from either side. So
when you say either side, you mean China and Bangladesh?
I'm from either side, as I say, because we have packed it up with artillery guns, we packed it up with missiles, we packed it up with aircraft, and believe you me, when I say packed it up, it really means packed it up. We understand the vulnerability of this Siliguri corridor, and we are prepared for the worst case scenario over there. And we've put the best of weapons over there. Let me put it this way.
All right.
Right?
All right. On that note, thank you so much, sir, for taking the time and doing this. Thank you.